My name is Marty Lang. I'm the director of the MFA in Film, Television, and Digital Media at the University of Georgia in the United States. I'm so honored to be here to give the keynote speech here at the conference, and I'd like to get right to it. My presentation is called The Self-Sustaining Filmmaker, the Evolution of Scripted Narrative Creation and Distribution in the Subscription Era. This is based in large part on a book that I've written called The Self-Sustaining Filmmaker, and it deals with crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, community filmmaking, and really a lot of sort of elements that independent filmmakers can use to kind of take over the process of filmmaking and the monetization of their work. This does apply pretty specifically to the subscription era in some ways that I'll talk about in a moment. But this is based on a book that I've written, came out about a year ago through Routledge Focal Press. And it's got a foreword from Mark Duplass, and Emmy and Golden Globe nominated actor, writer, director, producer. So hopefully after seeing this presentation, if you're interested, you might want to check it out. So I think the thing that we can start with is that the direction of the subscription era is changing a little bit. When it first began, you looked at platforms as sort of the targets for independent filmmakers to get their work seen, right? You think of worldwide platforms like Netflix or Disney Plus or Amazon Prime, or specifically South Korean platforms like TVING, Coupang Play, and Wave. Those are places that filmmakers wanted to get their films on, right? It wasn't so much about monetization, although certainly there are license fees and there are payments that can come along with that. But it was more about the destination than it was the monetization. Over time, that started to change. Enterprising filmmakers now have new places that they can go where they can offer subscription plans on their own for the content that they create. You think of places like Patreon, like Substack for folks that are writing newsletters. Mighty Networks is another great example of places where you can have digital content that can go out through a subscription fee. Buy Me a Coffee, another good example of that. These are platforms that allow the creators themselves to oversee the monetization of their content. So they're really in charge of building their own audiences and therefore creating their own businesses. So that's really been a big change. And to maximize the benefits of offering these subscriptions on their own, I feel like there needs to be an evolution in the way that these films are created and the way that they're distributed, certainly through the subscription platforms as well as other methods. And this sort of evolution is what I call self-sustaining filmmaking. So to kind of talk a little bit about what self-sustaining filmmaking actually is, I have a phrase that I hear a lot in the United States. It's that there's people that know how to build houses and there's people who know how to sell real estate. So the meaning of that is, there are different skill sets that folks have that allow them to specialize. In self-sustaining filmmaking, you can't live by that. Today's independent filmmakers need to be able to both build and sell. And if they can do both of those things, they control their destiny. This current independent film system is really kind of pushing filmmakers in this direction because up until now, the independent film system has required getting selected in order to move forward, right? So if you write an incredible script, a company will buy it. If you get selected for a big grant or by a financier, you get funded. If you get into a big film festival, you're being chosen over hundreds or thousands of other films. And if you get a distribution deal, you're being acquired by a company that's selecting you. And even if you get picked, the financial prospects that you currently have in the world of independent film are not that great. Pre-sales are drying up. You look at the proliferation of worldwide streaming platforms. Those are really cutting into foreign pre-sales deals because those platforms will want worldwide rights. DVD sales are practically non-existent now, although they are starting to come back a little bit. Distributors don't give minimum guarantees anymore. And the streaming subscription services, even if they select your film, you're most of the time on your own when it comes with the marketing of your product. So there needs to be a new way, right? And that's why we're here. So I think that there's three pillars that will sort of be the linchpins for future filmmakers to become self-sustaining. And I'll explain a little bit more about what each one is. The first one I call radical collaboration. The second one is called an entrepreneurial mindset. And then the third one is called holistic filmmaking. I'll talk a little bit again more specifically about what each one is. So how do we practice these? We'll get into an explanation of each of the three, and then I can talk a little bit more about specific examples. Radical collaboration, this concept kind of deals with the way filmmakers think of collaboration. If you've ever made a film, you know that it's a very collaborative endeavor, by its very nature. You work with a crew of people, you work with a cast, you work with a post-production team. And those are elements of collaboration that folks are pretty familiar with. But what I'm saying is that radical collaboration requires you to think about collaboration in a new way, to think about ways that you can incorporate partners that you bring onto your film in different ways, in more extensive ways. And I've got two examples that I can talk about right here. So the first example, if you know this building, this is the Mark Twain House. This is the adulthood home of Samuel Clemens, better known as author Mark Twain, in Hartford, Connecticut. My first feature film was a film called Rising Star, and we wanted to shoot in the Mark Twain House. No film had ever done it before. So we had approached them, and they said that they'd love to have us in there, and that it would cost us $300 an hour to shoot in the house. We were a film where the entire budget was around $50,000. So we told them we're not going to be able to do it for that amount of money. But we did think in terms of radical collaboration to create a new way that both sides could benefit from us being there. What we did was we offered them, instead of $300 an hour, we offered them $50 an hour. We had hoped to shoot for 6 hours in the house, so that would require us paying $300 instead of $1,800. And in exchange for that discount in rent, we would be able to host a focus group screening of the rough cut of the movie at their museum. They have a 200-seat movie theater there. And the key to this is that they could sell tickets to this screening and keep all the revenue. In effect, our audience would pay the rental fee to be able to go in and shoot. So we did that. We shot for 6 hours in the house. We paid $300. And then about 2 or 3 months later, we held a rough cut screening at the Mark Twain House. We sold 270 tickets. They ended up making about $1,000 more than they would have if we had paid full freight to film in the house. So in that case, everyone wins. And we thought of a location also as a distribution partner. So this is kind of a new form of thinking, and that's what I call radical collaboration. Another example of this, I have a film project that I'm working on right now. It's a road trip movie. It's called The Winnie. You can see that there's a Winnebago truck right here. And this is a story about a brother and sister whose mother passes away. And the brother and sister are required to drive her Winnebago across the country to her boyfriend's house in order to receive their inheritance. And when they actually arrived there, they found out that their mother actually faked her death. And this whole trip was a way to get their family to spend more time together. So sort of a dark comedy. And one of the things that we were thinking about for this was to actually make the film on a road trip would allow us to do something very interesting. We'd be able to stop in different cities to film different parts of the movie. And then once we got there, we would have local crew come out and actually work as the local sort of crew contingent for each of the cities that we went to. We also thought that if we partnered with film festivals that were in those cities, they might actually be able to help us finance the film. So we started approaching different film festivals to find out their interest. The first one that actually committed to it was the Jacksonville Film Festival in Jacksonville, Florida. They're actually going to give us a couple $1,000s in funding. And as part of the distribution of the film, the Jacksonville Film Festival will be one of the stops that the film makes, as well as filming in the city. So that's a really cool example of going to a distribution venue, right? In this case, a film festival, and using them and creating an opportunity for financing for them, and also creating an opportunity for marketing by bringing local crews into the making of the film. So again, radical collaboration, thinking a little bit differently and finding ways to incorporate partners in ways that you might not normally do. The second is the entrepreneurial mindset. And this is kind of part and parcel to the filmmaking process. You may have heard the term that every time someone makes a film, it's like starting a small business. That's not 100% true, but I think there's definitely something to that. Thinking entrepreneurially can be a way to really increase the opportunities for you to make money off the films that you create. Most filmmakers think like artists. Makes sense. You're telling stories. You're trying to evoke emotion in people, so that makes a lot of sense. but you need to think like someone who's creating a business, right? And not in terms of one film is one small business and your second film is another one. You want to think in terms of creating a business because you want to control the life cycle of your product. Film is a very interesting business because it's one of the only businesses where a filmmaker will make something, and then when it comes to the point where you can start to make money on it and you can start to actually monetize it, they hand off the responsibility of that to another company, to a distribution company, to a sales agent, something like that. In the world of business, that's very unusual, and it runs counter to the idea of controlling the entire process of the life cycle of your product. So if you start thinking in those terms, you can start thinking of ways to get the film out and actually monetize it in ways that will be more beneficial to you. This can also create efficiencies in the production process. This is something that not a lot of folks think about, but the process of making film can be kind of onerous at times. Crews can be pretty big. Resources can be used very quickly. If you can think in terms of how to make films at a high level of quality, but at a lower price point, maybe fewer crew members. That means that you have less food to pay for to feed people while they're there. The potential of maybe shooting with 2 crews at the same time to speed up a schedule. Those kinds of things will make a product that ultimately will be more monetizable for you because you spent less money to create it. And then third of all, this will identify chances for you to get the product into the hands of the people who want it, right? This is something that's really important. A lot of filmmakers don't think about the marketing process of their film when they start making something. They just assume that people are going to flock to the film and see it. It's really important that you identify who the people are who would be passionate about the stories that you're telling. And one of the great ways to do that is through crowdsourcing or through an open call. You can use open calls to incorporate peer production into really every step of the filmmaking process. If you're someone who enjoys creating stories in a group, you could create a collaborative development or screenwriting process to get more people involved in the writing. When you finish a film, the post-production and focus grouping is a great opportunity to get people together and offer opinions on where the film currently is, as well as potentially finding people who could be evangelizers for you once the film is finished. The distribution of the finished film, this is the state where you can take most advantage of the open call process because all of the people that you've rounded up for the film up until this point can potentially go out and be people to spread the word about the film or potentially set up screenings of the film on their own. Affiliate marketing is something that's not used very often in film, and that's something that an open call could provide. Also, the process of finding cast and crew members, finding resource providers, open calls can provide a lot for that. When we made Rising Star, we put out a Google form asking anyone if they wanted to help to let us know with any kind of help that they needed. And we got someone who responded. They were a violin player and they would play violin for us on the score if we wanted. We had a gentleman who ran a construction company offer concrete pouring services for our film, something we couldn't use. And we also had a person offer us his flock of goats. He was a farmer. We weren't able to use that, but I am trying to figure out a film right now that utilizes goats so that we can go back to him soon. There's also the most ubiquitous use of crowdsourcing, and it's not only used in film, but also music, video, table games, and any really kind of creative endeavor, and that's crowdfunding. And this is a big part of self-sustaining filmmaking because it does a number of things. A successful crowdfunding campaign can allow you to understand who your audience is, right? Who the people are that are passionate about your work. You can capitalize on the best marketing channels by finding out where they get their news, where they get their information. It can increase the value of your intellectual property. And when you're making a film, this is intellectual property that you'll own. And then most importantly for the artist, you're retaining creative control. So this is something, crowdfunding is a very important part of this process. I can go through a lot of the basics of working in crowdfunding. I have a speech that I do called Crowdfunding Fundamentals or Crowd Fundamentals, but I can talk about some of the highlights here. Beginning the process of crowdfunding means building an audience, right? And it has 3 questions that you need to answer. Who is your audience? Where are they, both online and in real life? And how can you get their email addresses? Direct contact is such an important part of crowdfunding, so making sure that you can get folks' email addresses really is the work. Sounds similar to marketing. It's exactly the same work. Only in this case, the endpoint is a financial contribution for a product that may not exist yet. It takes 3 steps, right? So finding your audience requires getting outside of your social circle. You need to take the burden off of funding from your loved ones, from your friends and family. That's a really important thing, and it'll allow you to find people that are specifically interested in your content, and not necessarily you as a human being, as a great cousin, as a wonderful grandson or granddaughter, that kind of thing. I had a film I produced called Champion the Girls, and we ran a crowdfunding campaign on Seed and Spark. We were able to raise about $30,000 in that crowdfunding campaign, but we only had about 80 contributors, and almost 70 of them were folks that the director directly knew. So this is a case where we really were focusing too much on friends and family, even though the campaign was successful. Contrast that with a film called Stay With Me. This is a film I wrote and directed. I crowdfunded it in 2020. And this campaign was a lot different because we spent time looking specifically for people who were passionate about mental health. The film's a drama about mental illness and mental illness advocacy. We ended up with about 154 supporters, and though we only raised $14,000 in that campaign, all of those people who were involved had a real vested interest in the content and in the subject matter. So that was something that really meant a lot. You want to join 1 or 2 social platforms that fit your lifestyle or where your audience is, right? If you're looking to make a science fiction film, you can go to Reddit, and there's a subreddit with 2 million people there. That's a great place to go. And you want to plant seeds with people. You don't just want to contact them and beg them to donate money to a campaign. It's really important that you establish personal connections. And then the third is growing an authentic following. You don't want to buy followers. That's not something that really helps anyone. Slow and steady wins the race. And you want to learn about who they follow and listen to, because that's a way for you to find other potential evangelizers that have their own audiences and that you can potentially connect with. So the third element here is called holistic filmmaking. And what I mean by holistic filmmaking is taking an opportunity to look and consider all of the other steps of the filmmaking process when you're in the stage that you're currently in, right? So an example of that would be, if you're in the development process, you have every other phase of filmmaking in front of you. So you want to be thinking about all of those phases when you're thinking of strategies for the story that you want to tell, for the way that you want to film it, and the way that you want to get it out into the world. Creating a film usually means writing a story first and then finding the elements to create it. Holistic filmmaking requires that you do the opposite. You can actually reverse engineer your story. You build your story around what you have, right? What are the locations that are near you? Who are the people that can help? You want to find the story in your community. Every town has a history. Every city has a history. And you can find interesting elements to add to your story by looking there. And then you want to consider genres, story topics, characters, and locations who can attract niche audiences. And usually if you're looking in your local area, elements like historical societies, different affinity groups, those are folks that are niche audiences, and if they can connect to your story in some way, you'll be able to involve them in the making of the film. When you're screenwriting, an example of holistic filmmaking might be co-writing with a writer in another city. So that way you can extend your reach and distribution to that other city that the writer is working in. When you're in pre-production, thinking if you cast a local media personality, a TV anchor or a radio host, could they help you with marketing the film once it's finished? We actually cast a radio DJ from Hartford for Rising Star named Gary Craig, and that gave us a year's worth of free publicity because he talked about the film every chance that he got. Could a location serve as a distribution venue, right? When you're in production, that's something you can be thinking about. For Rising Star, we filmed in a place called the Connecticut Science Center, and that venue had a 200-seat IMAX theater. We had our Connecticut premiere there, and we were able to sell 400 tickets at $20 a piece because we were able to connect with the audience from the Science Center as well as our own. When you're in post-production, can social media posts about picture editing, sound design help people get excited about the film's release? For Stay With Me, we put up a lot of updates about the editing of the film because it took almost 2 years, as it was during the pandemic. And that really got people interested because they got to see how the film was being made in real time. That got folks on board even after the crowdfunding campaign who wanted to see what we were doing. And then finally, for distribution, could partnering with local film festivals or organizations help build your audience for your next film? This is something that's really important. The idea of self-sustaining filmmaking is that once you do it once, you can pick up right where you left off and continue with all the resources that you have still in place. Your audience isn't going anywhere, and if you're good to them, they'll be good to you. I call this the loop of kindness. And thinking in terms of the subscription era, this is really important because if you keep your community happy, they're going to bring in their own friends, they're going to bring in their own family because they think it's an interesting process that they're involved in. That can bring in new subscribers that can help you as a filmmaker make more money. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. This is the three sort of major ideas that I think will help to evolve creation and distribution of independent film in the streaming era and subscription era. And I hope this was good for you. Thank you very much.